Jackson trying to escape and run for it, and he's got it and more. Lamar Jackson down the sideline. Will they give it to him? They will. Touchdown, Baltimore.
And with 1:17 left to play on Wild Card Weekend, the Hayes in the barn.
Oh my God! I wish you guys could. I wish we had a camera in here so you could see what we're doing. We're just a bunch of clowns in here.
How much fun is that?
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. It is Monday, October 4th, 10-4. Roger that. Ravens get the win out in Denver. They are going to go to 3-1 after a 23-7 victory over the Denver Broncos. Spenny unable to hop on the show tonight with me, Jake. So I'm joined by, it's actually funny because Rob Lowe is not going to be on the show, but we do have a form of Rob Lowe here with Kyle P. Barber wearing an NFL shirt, a branded NFL shirt with the shield on it and everything, if you're watching on YouTube.
You know, I'm just out here to rep the brand. I work for the Baltimore Ravens now. You know, I work in the NFL, so might as well sport the NFL logo and act like I've been here before and just be solid in my my attire.
Is that acting like you've been there before? That kind of, to me, wearing an NFL shirt on an NFL podcast, that's almost like wearing the shirt of the band to the concert.
I wore the shirt to the band to the concert. I think that's ridiculous that you're not supposed to do that. I think that's ridiculous. You wear your jersey to the football game. Why can't you wear the T-shirt of the band that you're going to see? I think that makes sense. I don't see the issue with that. Maybe that
makes a lot of sense if that's your take on that.
I mean, you wear your team's jersey when you're a fan and you go to the game, correct?
I guess. I just think that
not an I guess, it's a yes. It's a yes. You
sure.
do wear your shirt. I don't want to hear it. I'm out here repping the brand. All right, leave me alone.
Well, how's everything else going, bud?
Everything else is going pretty well. Work is going solid, and we're having a fun time over at Baltimore Beatdown, of course, between the podcast, between the article content, the social media. It's been a great time, and it's been a fun season. It's been an exciting season, that's for sure.
It has, and with the Ravens doing well out the gate after, I wouldn't say people weren't expecting it, but after a very dour, sort of difficult late July, August period, even into September with some of the injuries. The fact that they're sitting at 3-1 now is, I don't know if I'd say miraculous, but I certainly would bet on that. Even when they were at full strength, I had them starting off the year 2-2. So to walk out of this opening 4-game stretch at 3-1, one of those victories over the Chiefs, I'm pretty bullish on this team right now, man. I don't know how you're feeling, but that's just kind of where I'm at.
I'm confident in them because they keep doing it. It feels like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop and you're waiting for this team to finally be succumbing to their injuries and this grinded out style that we're not accustomed to in the Lamar Jackson era. But overall, the Ravens have found ways to win regardless of who's blocking at left tackle, who is covering the number 2 receiver. Regardless of whatever, this team finds ways to win, and I think that's a really big thing in the NFL. Having resiliency and redemption and resolve, just the 3 R's right there. It's important for any NFL club, and that's a big reason as to why they're 3-1, regardless of miracles, 66-yard field goals, and going blow for blow with the Kansas City Chiefs. Overall, the Ravens are 3-1, and that's not by accident. And people will point to, they could easily be winless, but they could easily be undefeated. I mean, a lot of teams go that way. A lot of games in the NFL are one-score games. Not everything is a 40-0 blowout. Shout out to the Texans on getting, mollywopped by the Buffalo Bills. But, the Kansas City Chiefs are easily winless and easily undefeated just the same. If it wasn't for the Browns making poor mistakes down the stretch in their week 1 contest, they would have been 0-3 after the Chargers game. So, it's something to take note of, that this team is finding ways to win, and they're in the win column 3 games to 1 for a reason.
Yeah, a little bit more of I was kind of thinking about this, and I think maybe the way that I might put it is that it kind of feels like they're maybe more than the sum of their parts right now, because they're duct taped together in a couple different spots. Along the offensive line, it's not looking great. Cornerback, they obviously lost a big time starter. Running back is an absolute mess right now, and they're really tinkering with that. Getting Le'Veon Bell active for the first time today on the season. He looked okay in spots, and Latavius Murray I thought looked good in this game. So, they're really piecing it together in certain spots. It's not always looking great, but at 3-1, you really can't argue with the result. So I'm definitely with you on that. But it was an interesting game. It started out, Ravens didn't look too great. They had a couple 3-and-outs to start the game on offense. They started out solid on defense. They got a sack on Bridgewater with Odafe Owe, who's looking really good as well. We should definitely give him a shout out. And then pretty much from there, Teddy Bridgewater can't do much else. He ends up getting hurt, has a concussion at halftime, is replaced by Drew Lock, who just couldn't do anything. And really, the Ravens' passing game is what carried their offense to that 23-7 victory. So it's been interesting in the fact that the running game just really hasn't been there at all. Lamar's passing has kind of been I think what's made the difference for this offense and this team, really. So they got there. By hook and by crook, they got to 100 rushing yards, which we did mention that we wanted to touch on. So we had Latavius Murray leading the way on the ground, 18 for 59, a touchdown. Lamar was 7 for 28. Le'Veon Bell 4 for 11. Devontae Freeman 1 for 4. 4 of Lamar's yards came at the end of the game. How, Kyle?
With a great interception by Anthony Averett to give the Ravens the ball with 2 seconds remaining. And rather than go victory formation, the Ravens run what I assume was quarterback power, and they run it off to the left side, and Lamar Jackson gains 4 on the ground to just eclipse the 100-yard rushing mark, which extends their rushing total as a team to 100 yards or more to, I believe, 42 games, tying the 74-77 Pittsburgh Steelers, the Franco Harris era of Pittsburgh Steelers play, and they'll have a chance to break the tie now next week against the Indianapolis Colts. What an absolute call by John Harbaugh to care enough about that record that, the game is won and they're going to run Lamar Jackson off to the left side and put a bulldozing group ahead of him and hope that he gets just enough yards for the record. I thought that was hilarious, cheeky, a little petty, and exactly what I would want from my head coach.
It's very, very Harbaugh. It's such a John Harbaugh move. I could think of maybe some other coaches in the league that would do this kind of thing. I think Bruce Arians certainly one. If anyone's watching on YouTube and curious right now, I'm set up a little bit differently because I got my eyes on the TV because I do want to see this Sunday Night Football Patriots-Bucks matchup. I could see some other coaches around the league doing it, but certainly others would not. And it is very Harbaugh to not only know about this record, but care enough about it that he sends out his quarterback out there with 2 seconds left on the clock to run a power to the left, kind of put him in harm's way a little bit to gain those yards. But God damn it, they were going to do it, and they did it. 100 yards on the dot, so they keep their streak alive. And it's funny coming against the Steelers, and then they're going to have a chance to break it against the Colts, another team they have some shared history with. So yeah, we definitely did want to touch on that, and I think there was a little bit of a contingent of outrage on Twitter. In particular, from certain people that didn't love the idea of it. I think I saw Ryan Russillo, who I like, but he said oh, well, imagine how Harbaugh would react if another coach did that to him. It's it wasn't disrespect to the Broncos at all. It was just them wanting to get the record. So they gained 4 yards and they did it. We don't have to make a big deal out of it. It's really just funny more than anything. And it's very, like I said, very Harbaugh. So love that. I
have 2 points here. The first one is, if they were stopped on that play, imagine the backlash of Broncos fans being like, "Ha, you couldn't even get the record. You tried, you got the win, but we definitely took away that rushing record from you guys, and that felt great." And I think the backlash would have been a little bit sweet to read about as well, like coming at it from like a journalist angle, like asking John Harbaugh about the failed, last play to get the rushing record and stuff, and to hear about the comments. I think that would have been really interesting. And the second thing I wanted to touch on is Pete Carroll would have been that kind of a coach, and watch him chewing gum and grinning on the sidelines. That's a guy that would definitely go for something like this. The game's in hand. The Ravens have won. It's all over. And why not go for the record? That makes total sense. And Pete Carroll would have been a guy that would have done it and grinned while he did it.
Rivera actually did this in the 2015 NFC Championship game, or not this, something similar to this. Panthers just absolutely whipping the Cardinals shit, and they're up to, I think, 48 to something at a certain point. It's like fourth quarter. Cam Newton is still in the game. This is like when they went to the Super Bowl, and Cam had the MVP that year. They get up to 48, and they go for 2 to get to 50 because they wanted the 50 burger. So I immediately kind of thought back to that, and like, to me, it's not an outrage inducing thing. It's just kind of like one of those funny things. And like, frankly, like, it didn't even look like the Broncos really even tried to stop it. Maybe the Ravens were just that good, but they didn't really get a ton of pop in the run game today. And that looked like maybe one of their more productive plays. And I enjoyed Lamar doing the little butt slide thing that he did against the Titans when they won the game. I thought it was just a very entertaining way to end the game all around. So glad we touched on that.
Completely agree.
Anything else from the game in particular? I know we've touched on Oweh a little bit. I did also want to give a shout out to Hollywood Brown, coming back big time in this game. Obviously, we all know he had the rough one last week with all the drops and whatnot. But contrary to when he's had some other rough performances, there wasn't this kind of mercurial nature around it. He seemed pretty positive. I tweeted about Ted Lasso, be a goldfish. That kind of seemed to be the mindset he was taking into it. And he really broke this game open with that long touchdown from around midfield. I don't have the exact yardage in front of me, but splits the two safeties and diving catch, probably one of the most impressive plays of his career to get them into this game. He has another catch and run later on, and just a consistently good game overall for him. I think he led the way in receiving yards, 4 for 91. Yep. And big game for him. Big game for James Prochet. Prochet Hive is alive and well, 5 for 74 today.
Yeah, excellent play and production from James Prochet. They had him at the post-game presser because of his production, and the big names get the big players get the post-game interviews, and Prochet was able to get that interview today, along with Tyus Bowser, who I think we'll mention later on in the show if we don't touch on that prior to the questions. But excellent game from James Prochet, good route running, and excellent hands and knowledge on where to get the first downs, because he was backed up against the sideline and a defender after he caught the ball and needed to get about a yard and a half, maybe even 2, and just kind of bullied backwards, leaning the shoulder and just trying to get that first down yardage and extend the drive. And he did so on multiple occasions. Somebody I kind of wanted to mention was Devin Duvernay, who, gets a fair catch call at about the 5-yard line, which is a poor decision by him. And the Ravens are backed up. Their offense was struggling, and now you have to drive 95 yards to get into the end zone. And it was a poor decision. And later on, he gets a huge return, runs down the field and breaks loose for a big punt return. I believe it was 42 yards on that play, and comes back in with a trio of catches as well. Catches 3 balls for 31 yards. And helped extend some drives as well. Those guys made some plays. And with that, I want to shout out just Keith Martin and T. Williams, wide receiver coach T. Martin and pass game specialist Keith Williams. Both have really shown their mark on this team with the development of the wide receiving unit. Marquise Brown clearly being a part of that as well. He had to struggle some game, of course, but we went in, had some extra work with Keith Williams, is what he said, was catching a bunch of soccer balls and goes out and dives for a huge 49-yard touchdown. And that is the ultimate play from Hollywood. And moreover, that was the game-winning touchdown. The Broncos only scored 7 points. That was the second score for the Ravens, and that put them up 14-7, and ultimately the Ravens exit 23-7.
Yeah, and great job by the coaching staff in general. I think I tweeted before the game that if they got to 3-1, it would be a huge credit to them just because of sort of the fly by night nature of this roster in some respects. And I think those two guys have gotten plenty of shout outs. I think they deserve to really get their due praise now because it's not just theoretical. We're actually seeing the results on the field. The soccer ball thing I think was funny. I was having a little fun with it. I think they mentioned on the broadcast that it's like a firing the fingertips type thing and kind of getting those involved to like really help them sort of acclimate to a game situation. And I guess it's working. So shout out to them. And lastly, I guess shout out to the defense. It feels like to me, they gave up the touchdown drive early on. It's like, okay, is it going to be another long game for them? But it felt like to me, they hadn't put together a consistently good game. They had good stretches, but after that touchdown, man, they were just pretty much completely locked down, whether it was Bridgewater, who, moved the ball fairly well, or it was Locke. They just had a really, really damn good game. They looked probably the best they have all year, I think, and they look consistent too. So shout out to them.
Yeah, third down efficiency for the Broncos, only 3 for 14 on third down, just over 100 rushing yards from the Broncos, and passing yardage didn't even eclipse 150 yards. They were at 148 passing yards total. So a complete shutdown after that first touchdown from the Denver Broncos. And even that play was just a little bit of a miscommunication, I believe, with Jimmy Smith and Brandon Stevens on the pick play, which a lot of us could see from the broadcast, but down on the field, it's tough for them to get communicated well, and the fans were roaring even though the Broncos were on offense, and that stadium's loud. I've been to Mile High Stadium. It's a lot of fun there, and the fans really get into it. Denver and Colorado as a whole love their football, so seeing that go on for the Ravens was in the Broncos, that was a fun game to watch. And like you said, that was a real concerted effort from the Ravens defense. They cleaned up the tackling issues that a lot of us were talking about on the first few drives, and that Javonte Williams rush that went for about 31 yards, and Marlon Humphrey tweeted something that he was carried on like a backpack for 20 yards, and that's pretty embarrassing. But overall, the Ravens cleaned it up. Chuck Clark lit a guy up and never returned to the game. A lot of physicality in this game on both sides for both the Broncos and Ravens regarding defense and hitting. And that was a fun football game. It kind of felt like an old school era football game where a lot of physicality and defense was at the forefront.
Yeah, the defense really was hitting, and that Chuck Clark hit was, I think, emblematic of the way Chuck Clark is playing this year. He's looked awesome. He looked really good today. Some issues from the linebackers, like it looked like Patrick Queen might have gotten benched at one point for Josh Bynes. He's really continues to kind of struggle this year, but I think when the defense turned around, he turned around a little bit. He wound up getting back out there, so they need more from the linebackers. The tackling has to be more consistent, but to your point, they did turn it around kind of mid-game and really like in the second quarter. And from there, it kind of just wasn't an issue anymore. So, a big shout out to them. And anything else you wanted to touch on before we get into listener questions, bud?
I'm ready to get into these listener questions. Thank you all for sending them in so we have something to talk about.
Absolutely. You can send them into @podcast beatdown if you're curious and are a first-time listener. But jumping right into them, Scott Yeager. What do you do when Bateman and Boykin are ready? Someone will have to stay down. It sounds kind of like they are ready. It sounds in particular like Bateman is probably going to be ready to go. Like to me, like you bring up Bateman, and if you have to leave one down, then you leave Boykin down. Like you didn't draft Rashad Bateman for him to kind of sit around in lieu of Miles Boykin. So that's kind of would be my answer to that. And I think he will be making his debut next week on Monday Night Football versus the Colts. So.
Yeah, I expect Rashad Bateman to be back pretty soon. He's been looking pretty good from, when he was posting social media vids of him just doing a little bit of jogging, and we've seen some practice plays from him jogging, running around, catching some footballs, and I've seen him out there as well. Now it comes down to how healthy he is when he gets on the field, because even Torrey Smith tweeted about it when news broke that Rashad Bateman was back from injured reserve, that you got to be patient with this kid. Like, this is a groin injury. He had groin surgery for this. That's no joke. And I think I've spoken on this before, but I'm a big hockey fan, and frequently, you know, goalies will suffer groin injuries because they're stretching and doing the splits for 60 minutes plus and lunging across the ice and everything. And just one wrong slip or move or blade, you know, skate getting stuck in the ice all of a sudden can injure a groin. And then your goaltender is dealing with a groin injury for the entirety of at least one season. If not, it's stretching into the next one. So just be patient with Rashad Bateman as he returns, and because he's in a very physical position that anything requires your groin. Anytime you move, anytime any muscle really activate, it feels like that, and a lot of that lateral movement comes at the expense of utilizing your groin muscles. So just be patient with that. But overall, yeah, you got to you take Rashad Bateman to the field, and either James Prochet or Devin Duvernay is going to have to take a back seat, and Bateman's going to be on the field.
Yeah, and I've made this point, and I might have even gotten a little bit of backlash on this, that they don't even really need him, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marquise Brown is playing amazing. Sammy Watkins is playing really well. James Prochet, like we touched on, stepped up today, and you've got a good rotation there at tight end. So like as far as like your pass catchers go, you're more or less fine. Like you want him to be good, but the fact that he's kind of, I wouldn't say a luxury, but he's closer to a luxury than a necessity at this point. So that's going to be good for his development to be able to ease him in. I'm excited to see what they get out of him on Monday night if he does wind up playing, as is the rumor. But yeah, I think Bateman comes up. We'll see what happens with Boykin. Not really sure, but that would be that. Skipjack, what do you chalk up the improvement in the passing game to? It hasn't been, like, weirdly, it hasn't been super consistent because we've seen a little bit of the kind of weird, like, double clutching stuff from Lamar, and he hasn't been perfect. But I would say, like, Lamar kind of seeing the deep shots a lot better than he did last year. Like, there was a little bit of a misconception that Hollywood Brown played really poorly at times last year, but a lot of the time, like, Lamar just wasn't hitting him. He was either being gun shy or he was overthrowing him. That happened a good amount of times. And this year, even when Hollywood is dropping it, like he did against Detroit, Lamar is hitting him deep. Like he hits him deep against the Chiefs. He hooked up with him for the touchdown against the Raiders. He hit him deep against Detroit, or really should have hit him deep against Detroit 3 times. Hits him deep in this game, and then he's making plays after the catch in this game as well. So I think Lamar is kind of trusting it a little bit better as far as throwing deep. I couldn't really 100% break down like what Roman is doing, but it feels like there's a little bit more nuance with the passing game, and the pass protection's, like, when it holds up really well, and they look really good. They have their issues along the offensive line, but it seems like they're really stressing pass protection, and it's working out pretty well.
Yeah, you heard it multiple times on the broadcast that Lamar Jackson drops back all day to throw, and you could just see he had a full pocket to throw around in, which was really impressive. On the topic of Marquise Brown, he is averaging, if he continues at this current pace, he'll be breaking over 1,300 yards receiving. He's had a touchdown in 3 of 4 games, and he should have had a touchdown or 2 against Detroit. That ultimately did not work out, but I mean, this is a receiver that's not only expected to have, 1,000 yards or anything, but he's expected to have 1,300 yards. That's incredible. And even if it was over a 16-game stretch instead of a 17-game stretch, he would still be averaging enough yardage right now over 4 games to have 1,304 yards. So he has been producing each and every game, and he's on fire to be a 1,000-yard receiver for the Ravens.
Heavy Lobster 43. Can we talk about James Prochet? Dude was a straight baller today. He was, and what I would specifically point out with him is that I like the fact that he's getting involved in different areas of the field. I think my main concern with him, I've kind of had a weird relationship with Prochet where I actually liked him a lot as a prospect, as like a late round guy they could get. They wind up doing that, so I really liked him. And then I think fans kind of glommed onto his highlights at SMU a little bit, and I think they got a little bit too crazy with like, oh, this guy's going to be like this starting caliber player. He's going to be, this jump ball specialist. I just thought he was a little physically limited to be like a really productive NFL player. But I don't know. I thought he could have carved out some kind of role, and it seems like he's carving out a pretty good role. And to that point, and he looked pretty freaking fast on that catch and run that he had today, like over the middle. He was getting involved on the sort of the perimeter as well. So it looks like he's sort of running the full route tree. He's making sideline grabs, and he's just sort of doing it all. He looks like a complete player. a pro, if you will.
Yes, very much so. Like we had already mentioned, 5 receptions for 74 yards, a 32-yard reception for his longest catch of the day, that catch and run. Excellent play by him. And overall, I think we've already said everything about him. He looks excellent, and he looks like a polished NFL wide receiver, which is probably the best compliment you can give him.
Absolutely. Zev Moses. What do you think roaming should switch to in third and short situations? Without Gus, we can't seem to convert on the ground, or at least on inside runs. Maybe more like options. It feels like they're not really doing a lot of options. It feels like every single time. I think Spencer has kind of made this point that they go inside zone out of the pistol every single time they're in third or fourth and short. They did it against the Raiders when they didn't convert that fourth down. They've had it happen a couple other times where they got stuffed. It happened today. Maybe just kind of get out of that a little bit, maybe get in the I formation and get Ricard involved. And if that's a decoy and you want to pass it a little bit, I'd be fine with that. If you want to mix in some RPOs, I think they ran at least one RPO today. Just kind of something to mix it up a little bit, just from this like pistol inside zone thing that we're seeing. I think they've shown that they're kind of not really built to be able to convert those, unfortunately, with the offensive line built the way that it is and with Gus out. So it's time to mix it up there. I agree.
Yeah, I think they see the strength of this offensive line as their guards and center, because Bozeman has been really productive as a center for the Ravens so far, and they like what they've seen out of Kevin Zeitler. So they've been trying to use their best guys. You give the ball to your best guy. You try to target your best guys, and those are on the offensive line at center and right guard. So they've been trying to run the ball through those players. Unfortunately, it just hasn't been as successful, and they're trying to figure out new ways, you would hope. But thus far, it's been that silly pistol run, inside zone, inside rush concept, and it's been a little bit aggravating to time and time again see line up and know what's coming as a fan. That's very concerning, because if we know what's coming, the coaching staff for the opponents certainly know exactly what the play call is.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're going to have to mix that up, or start mixing that up. Stuart Shock, if that rushing streak was held by anyone other than the Steelers, does Harbaugh run that play? No, I think that's just a kind of a funny tie-in and kind of a good, nice little middle finger to our friends up there northwest of us. I think he was keyed in on that record, and he would have wanted to get it either way.
Yeah, say like the Seattle Seahawks or like the LaDainian Tomlinson like Chargers had that record, just spitballing random teams, just because you're asking if it's any other team that whether he'd go for it. I think he still would. I think Harbaugh, as long as the game is won, he's down about it. If that game was a one score affair, if the Ravens were up by 3 or 7, they don't go for that, or even 8. I don't think they go for it. But with it being a 2-score deficit with that little of time left, I think he was comfortable with it. Because if all of a sudden they scoop up a fumble from Lamar Jackson and the ball lands in Von Miller's arms and he's sprinting to the end zone and they're a PAT or a 2-point conversion away from tying or winning the game, that ball definitely is not being ran. It's in victory formation. It all comes from the situation and the setting of the play, and that is the game was in hand, and it doesn't matter whether or not the Steelers had it, even though it does give it a little bit more juice that this was a Steelers record that he's attempting to fall. But yeah, overall, it's definitely not because it's a Steelers record. It's because Harbaugh, I think, just wants a little bit more in the record books, and you can't blame a guy for wanting that.
Absolutely not. Ravens burner. Do you think teams will start to play the Ravens more traditionally on defense instead of the make Lamar throw D? This is an interesting one, I think, because of the report out there about certain defensive coordinators calling Aaron Glenn, the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator, to ask about how to stop the Ravens offense. And I think the joke that was kind of put out there was that, just make Hollywood Brown drop the ball. You look at look at what happened today. That's basically what it came down to. And it's not that simple, but basically to me, Spencer has used the word flubber before. I think it more in regards to defense, but it's just about adapting to what they give you. You're seeing a lot of stacked boxes over these first couple of weeks, and guess what? They went out. We whined and bitched and moaned about it last year that they needed weapons in the passing game. They went and got it. The pass protection is holding up, so they're built to throw the damn ball. And if they're teams are going to stack the box, and they're going to do that. If teams start to play a little bit more of a traditional try to stop the pass, and I think they're just going to find out a way to run. Like, I think this is a pretty kind of an amoeba-esque offense in that way, and I'd be excited to see them respond to something like that. And I think Jackson's rushing ability is something that hasn't even been really utilized that much this year. So that's another wild card element of the offense as well.
Completely agree with that. I think it's ridiculous that Aaron Glenn is getting phone calls about how to stop the Ravens, because truly it was a blowout had Marquise Brown not caught, dropped 14 or even 21 points from the offense itself. And I think that notion's silly. And even, Mark Andrews could have hauled in a touchdown grab against the Lions as well, that I think a lot of people are forgetting, just because he got a little bit lost and tripped up in the play. But I think ultimately he should have caught it. But I understand that's a difficult play to make. But overall, I think that's silly. Keep stacking the box, and Lamar Jackson's going to continue to throw for 300 yards. Today was his second career game throwing for 300 yards or more. And he went in and carved him up. He looked great as a drop back quarterback. Yes, he's a dual threat quarterback, the most lethal in the game. But if you're going to ask him to throw, if you're going to throw 8 guys in the box, he's going to throw it to Devin Duvernay and James Prochet. If he's not going to Sammy Watkins, Marquise Brown, and Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews had a hell of a game as well.
Yeah, he did. He really had a nice game, especially like I mentioned Hollywood Brown breaking the offense open. It kind of felt like Andrews was the element that allowed them to start kind of turning the engine over a little bit with those kind of teardrop catches that he was making on the Ravens' first scoring drive. I thought he looked very impressive too. Jason Wilson, how impressed have you guys been with the offense's ability, specifically Roman and Lamar, to be successful considering the constant shuffling at the tackle spots? Super impressed. I mean, especially it's not even just the tackle spots, like running backs, there's a whole discussion about running backs, they don't matter or whatever. We don't have to get into that, but no. They lose their starting running backs. They lose, Stanley at tackle, and Villanueva's moving around. He gets hurt. Andre Smith comes in. The fact that they're able to be not only productive, but explosive in the passing game with that going on, you got to give Roman a lot of credit. First thing, you got to give Lamar a lot of credit for not allowing his mechanics to break down, because we've seen him have mechanical issues in worse circumstances, or not as bad circumstances as this. And it feels like with pretty bad circumstances at the tackle spot, he's holding up pretty well so far. So shout out to them.
Yeah, it's been excellent to see the Ravens adjust and adapt to their deficiencies. Their tackles go out. Andre Smith is in at left tackle, which is far from ideal. And the Ravens kind of utilized quick passing concepts, and they kept stacking the box. They kept stacking the box against the Ravens, and he went out there and threw the ball and connected with multiple receivers. I believe 5+ receivers on the day, and that's a testament to the Ravens knowing that they need to adjust and get the ball tossed around, and to make their defense, the Broncos defense, utilize all 11 men for play. They can't just be lacking concern over somebody like Devin Duvernay or James Prochet. They have to cover him, because Jackson's going to throw it to him. He's going to go through his progressions. He's going to go through his reads, and he's going to find the guy that's open, and he's going to connect with him. And we saw that today. Over 300 yards passing from Lamar. I'm really impressed with what I saw from him today.
Absolutely. Stuart Schock follows up his earlier question with also, how nice was it to have a relatively stress-free end to a game this season? I thought very nice. Just for my cardiac health, for one thing, but also nice in the sense that you're talking about doing that on the road to a 3-0 team, walking out of there with effectively a 3-score victory is, I think it says a lot. So shout out to them for that. Annoying stat guy, if Villanueva is down for a few weeks, will we finally see Adrian Ely? And he put those in all caps. My guess would be yeah, but it sounds like Villanueva is fine. Harbaugh's comments after the presser said nothing out of the ordinary. So I think we're going to continue to see AV as Stanley is reportedly working his way back.
Yeah, I expect Villanueva to return by next week, especially since, they get a little extra break because it's on Monday night that they play the Colts, not Sunday in the morning or even Thursday night football, which would have been horrible for a schedule lineup there. But I'm not too concerned with Villanueva. I expect him to be back.
Absolutely. So we got a shout out to James Prochet. We've kind of already touched on that, but that was Seth. Cody says, okay, so we got another. So he says, if AV misses time, does Andre Smith really start at left tackle until Ronnie is back, or could they look outside the organization, move Macari to left tackle, and bring up Ely? I think we already touched on that. Sounds like Villanueva is going to be fine. Ryan, why do people still whine about Roman on this app when Lamar Jackson is throwing the ball like an absolute demon and Roman is helping him to make it happen? I think it's just kind of a psychological thing where if your offense is like struggling at literally any point, your reaction naturally is going to be complain about it. And if one of the potential targets is a player who you have an emotional attachment to and you love and who's giving you a lot of really fun moments, you're probably not going to be too critical of him. You're going to be critical of the relatively faceless entity that is, it is responsible for his success in some ways, but it goes hand in hand. And I don't know. I think Roman probably is due a little bit of credit. I was never one of these people that pretended to understand all this, BS about passing concepts that people were complaining about to begin with. I don't know if I could, without really kind of breaking things down, give you a schematical reason why he's been good or better than people were expecting through these first 4 games. But I think he is due a little bit of a shout out just for the fact that I think they're fairly talent poor along the offensive line right now, and he's making it work.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a very nuanced response. Overall, Greg Roman's helped produce this offense into record-breaking territory, as we've spoken on. They had the most rushing yards in NFL history in a single season as a team, and there's a reason Lamar Jackson has won a unanimous MVP award. There's a reason why this team is one of the most winningest in the Lamar Jackson era, and that isn't just because of the players and player, it's because of the offensive coordinator. It's just it's hard to criticize the players that are executing even when they're not executing, because like you said, there's a faceless, nameless entity that you can't quantify always, and there's a lot of information that's being withheld because you don't know what he's calling, you don't know what the checks are, you don't know what Lamar is and is not calling out as audibling into, and I think that's challenging for us to quantify, as I said. And because of that, you just want to put blame somewhere. Fans want to blame something when things are not working. And that's a very easy area to point because it's not a player. It's not somebody you, like you said, you have an emotional attachment to. Instead, you see it as a specific person that you can point blame on and feel satisfaction in saying, if this wasn't this person, if it was somebody else, this would be operating much more efficiently, because you just want to be more positive on the team and you want them to be better. And that's just the quick, easy fix in a lot of people's minds.
It's also tough when you're a hypothetical Super Bowl contender as a fan to admit that you're talent poor at a certain spot on your roster. And I think they were fans, and maybe, myself included, were willing to admit that last year with the wide receiver position, because that's something that, has been going on with this franchise for the past 25 years. But right now, they're not talented enough on the offensive line, I don't think. But they're scraping it together and they're making it work. But it feels like fans aren't going to be as quick to admit that to themselves as they are when, you have like a drive stall out and it's like, oh, well, Greg Roman. Well, it's like, well, I don't know. And like Spenny, actually, he had some sort of tweet about somebody coming after him and like whining about Greg Roman. It was literally right after the Andre Smith face mask wipes out the Mark Andrews touchdown that would have effectively ended the game. And that was a good call by Roman, actually, if you go back and watch the replay. So it is a nuanced issue. It's kind of tough to really break down, but I don't know. I think it's a confluence of a lot of things and kind of an inability to admit that you're not maybe talented enough in certain spots at times. That's probably plays into it. John Ernest, why does Queen seem as if he's not there right now?
I don't know exactly what he means by he doesn't seem like he's not there right now. I assume that he's if he's not on the field sometimes, I mean, it's because he's getting benched because he hasn't been the most productive linebacker this year. PFF had him graded at like a 30 overall at some points. I don't know if it's been multiple games or just overall his season grade, but he hasn't been graded really well. And he's struggled in areas. He looked excellent in that week 1 game. He was flying all over the field. He's incredibly fast, but I think Spencer talked about it on Twitter today that he isn't attacking and engaging in blocks and attempting to shed them and break through them and execute on plays. And when that happens, this you're not going to be on the field for much because the Ravens want you to make plays. They want you to execute on your assignments, and he hasn't been doing that consistently enough to warrant participating in every snap.
Yeah, and you can take the bad with the good sometimes, especially with a young player. And we got bad with good last year, or good with bad, I should say. It just in relation to how we're talking about this right now, because he made a lot of plays. He had a decent amount of sacks. I think he had a touchdown against the Bengals. Like, he had some really big games, but there was kind of a sense of like, he's playing with his hair on fire a little bit. And he's trying a little bit too hard. And sometimes that leads to big plays. And sometimes that leads to him giving up big plays, as we saw at times. And kind of feels like this year we've seen a lot of the giving stuff up and not tackling, which you really can't do if you're not going to be making plays. And he has not made the plays thus far. So it's not good, man. It sucks. He has plenty of time to turn around. He's young. We've made the Devin White comparison. Hopefully he can kind of have a similar renaissance at some point, but it's not great right now.
Yeah.
Ben Gorniak, what players out there could replace Andre Smith on the free agent market?
Regarding free agency, the Ravens only have $2.2 million in cap space, which is I believe, fourth lowest or fourth fewest amount of dollars available to spend. So they don't have money to go out and, find somebody on free agency, find somebody that's available. They just don't have it. They lack the money, they lack the spending, and it's going to be challenging for them to be able to find anybody. As for like available guys, I don't really have anybody off the top of my head that I can consider or see them pursuing. It's a thin position in the NFL for a reason, because they're incredibly valuable. And when you have a good one, you keep them. And when you don't have a good one, and when there's a bunch of bad ones out there, you don't want to sign them.
When you're talking about Andre Smith, like taking meaningful snaps for you, chances are there's probably not a lot of great options out there, is how I would break that down. Adam Gardner. What's the biggest improvement in Lamar's passing game, mechanics, footwork? Love y'all. We love you too. The biggest improvement in his passing game, he's throwing a really tight spiral these days. Like, that was something that he kind of struggled with a little bit. It's not always something that even really matters that much, but on something like a deep ball, for example, like the ball just looked so clean coming off his hand today. Putting that ball up there for Hollywood. He's also added, I feel like, a lot more nuance to some of his deep passes. Like, there's more trajectory in certain spots. For example, Mark Andrews, that first big catch that he made, he's really dropping it in the bucket, like putting some trash and some arc on it and dropping it over the defender, as opposed to just rifling it at Andrews, which is something that younger quarterbacks can struggle with. I feel like he has struggled with that at times, and it hasn't been an issue for him this year at all. And in fact, he's kind of, I feel like, turned touch passing into a little bit of a strength for himself. Mainly the issue that he struggled with as far as mechanics goes, or like narrowing out his base so that he really can't put as much velocity on throws at times when his legs are super close together. I feel like he's gotten a lot better, really starting like 2 years ago, the MVP season. He got a lot better at sort of widening that base out, giving himself more drive on his passes, and just kind of improving his velocity with the ball coming off his hand. I think that's something that he is a much more consistent part of his game now. So that's probably a big part of it.
I think a lot of the improvements stem from his receiving group as well. I think he had a lot of these traits going into last season, but when you don't have the structure surrounding you, it's really hard to build anything off of it. So having Marquise Brown healthy and activated for every game, and I know he didn't miss miss much time last season. Just overall, he's running around and he's healthy and he looks 100% or as close to 100% as Marquise Brown can get. He has Sammy Watkins and Mark Andrews. We gush about these guys all the time, but having those and the concepts from passing game specialists and passing game coordinators, I think has improved his ability. But overall, the most mechanical improvement, I would agree with you, is that spiral, which ultimately leads to better deep ball throws and the touch that he gets from it. You see him step up in the pocket. He's been doing that for years. He's been able to navigate pockets and find a good release angle and operate functionally and fluidly, time after time for years now. But it just feels like the receiving group is offering more separation for him to connect on these throws, and he's executing them fine.
D12 season, you're going to like this one. Is Cook washed?
What? Why would Sam Cook be washed? He had some great punts. No, they didn't all bounce his way, but he still had a touchback in there, and he had some really big punts. I think that he played fine. I think that, this was a punting competition at one point with the Broncos punter. I think he racked up over 500 yards on punts. I'm going to pull it up right now just because that's a stat that, I'm going to love. He averaged 49.1 yards on 10 punts. So he was at 491 yards with a long of 68. So no, I don't think that, and that's Martin. That's not Sam Cook, but no, Sam Cook is not washed. Get out of here with that talk. Are you kidding me?
I had to tee you up for that.
47.9 yard average. He had one inside the 20. He had one touchback. It's not like there was anything bad from his game. The Broncos scored 7 points, and that certainly wasn't because he had a shanked punt. He had great holds on Justin Tucker's 3 field goals, with 2 of them being in 40-yard range territory. So I have no issue with Sam Cook.
Actually, I had to tee you up, so I'm glad. And now we can move on. Calvin, Owe is the best Ravens rookie pass rusher since blank. I mean, is it Terrell Suggs? Like, who else would it be, really?
Peter Ballware.
Maybe, yeah. But was Ballware?
Ballware was before.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
Suggs. Yeah. So Suggs is definitely like the bar on that.
Rookie of the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I don't think anybody. Who else could you really go after in this? Not Courtney Upshaw, that's for sure.
No, and they really didn't. They really haven't, like, for as much as they have pedigree at that position.
Udon, but no. Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith had a decent first year. Let me pull up his stats to compare. His first year, he had 5.5. Yeah, he had 5.5 sacks in 15 games. I think Zadarius Smith is probably the guy. He had 7 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, 5.5 sacks. I think you probably have to give it up to Zadarius Smith. And that's a pretty complimentary area to have. And Odafe Owe already has 2 sacks on the year through 4 games, so he's right on pace to get 7.5. So I think that's a pretty good marker there, and I think that's a good comparison. Zadarius Smith rookie year was really fun to watch, and that's a good compliment.
Yeah, they just never drafted an outside linebacker in the first round, I feel like. Or at least
correct. It's only been Terrell Suggs and Odafe Owe. Those are the only 2 edge rushers that they've drafted in the first. Oh, excuse me, and Peter Ballware. Those are the only guys that they've drafted in the first round for outside linebackers. As far as like defensive players, of course, they've gone all over the place. With Haloti Ngata, they've picked Dwan Edwards. That was 2nd round. But yeah, overall they haven't drafted specific outside linebacking edge rushers in the first round.
Absolutely, which is kind of weird to think about because they do have good pedigree at that position. Orioles Haiku was the skinny poster out, and he put the little dot graphic in there, but we don't have to
the next gen graphic. Nice.
Yeah, he says was the skinny poster out from Hollywood a good way to counter Fangio's mofo defense that Spencer talked about in his article? AKA, does this prove that Roman isn't a complete idiot in the passing game like some people make him out to be? No, I don't think he is. And I think to our point, we talked about the talent issues. It makes it a lot easier to get a guy like Hollywood Brown open when you have Sammy Watkins on the other side. And I think this obviously was the perfect way to attack it. And Hollywood, it's interesting because he didn't do anything super technical. He didn't have to stack a DB or anything like that, or he didn't have to create a ton of leverage. Basically, he just ran the skinny post to his point. He put his foot in the ground in front of Justin Simmons and just ran behind them, and Lamar had all time to throw. So he hooked up with him there, and I think it was a really good call by Roman. Mofo meaning middle of the field open, not the dirty terminology that I'm sure your mind was going to.
No. You want to know why my mind wasn't going there? Because I edited that article and I was gushing to Spencer about it. I was DMing him on Slack. I was like, man, I'm only a paragraph or two into this and I'm loving this article. I was just cleaning up some grammar stuff, but he was crushing it. And I was really happy to read that one. I got the first read on it. I was the first person to edit it. So it looked clean and I was really impressed by it. So that was something that I was thinking about too. So one, shout out for reading the article content on Baltimore Beatdown and then citing it in a question for the podcast. That's big ups from who was that?
It's Orioles Haiku. He's a pretty nice young mofo.
I would agree with that. A pretty nice young middle of the field open. Yeah, but that's definitely an excellent way to get to the actual question from my perspective. Excellent way to attack the defense and utilize their scheme against them. And I don't think that's Greg Roman being a genius and also Fangio being.
Justin Simmons was coming down the spot and covering him one-on-one. So I think that might have been a good way of taking advantage of that.
They've been utilizing Mark Andrews and Sammy Watkins on underneath routes on that same drive too, because Watkins was catching some short crossers underneath and then to go over the top after some play action, I think on the same drive as well. But the Ravens were utilizing a lot of play action. They were trying to get safeties to bite. So I think that was a set thing that they were going into that game on, that hey, if we utilize a lot of this and then we keep coming at them with this other look, then they're going to finally bite. We're going to suck in the defense and we're just going to go over the top. And that's what 11-man execution looks like when a receiver gets the route, the quarterback gets the time, the protection, everybody else is running their assignment. And, a deep ball ends in a Superman catching touchdown.
Absolutely. Radon's ego. Is it feasible to think that the Ravens could have a top 10 passing offense and rushing attack this year with the way Lamar is throwing and reading defenses? Can't just take away the run anymore to beat the Ravens. I think that's feasible. I think passing, they certainly seem to be off to that. Seem to be off to a pretty good start in that respect. I don't know as much about rushing. It just feels like we've talked about the offensive line. They really lack pop in the run game. I don't know what the solution is going to be. I assume Ronnie Stanley and Nick Boyle will help out with that big time, but this is much more of a passing offense right now.
Yeah, this is what you hoped you didn't need to have as your one dimension, but you're okay with it being the one dimension. The fans and everybody has wanted this team to further develop the passing attack to where you have both options at your disposal. You have this strong, powerful run game that's accompanied by a solid passing offense. Right now, though, the run game is you're needing 4 yards from Lamar Jackson on a victory formation snap to get 100 yards on the ground. And instead, you got Lamar Jackson airing it out for 300 yards and throwing a touchdown or two. And instead, this is a good place for the Ravens passing offense to be. It's not so much for the rushing offense. And that's just, like you said, accumulated injuries from Stanley, Nick Boyle, Alejandro Villanueva, and just guys going down with your running back, specifically Justice Hill, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards. They're just succumbing to injury and they're trying to make the most of it. And I'm not quite sure exactly what the cure-all will be, but if anybody can figure it out, it's most certainly Greg Roman with Lamar Jackson as his quarterback and a good team.
Absolutely. Last one from Cody McGowan. The DL were excellent today. Who was y'all's standout? I'd have to go with Mr. Matabike breaking the duck and getting that sack. A big play by him, and shout out to him.
Yeah, I think Matabike has got to be the correct answer here. Great sack by him, and overall, some strong pressure. Tyus Bowser, I know that he's not the DL, but he's the linebacker there. 2 sacks for the known as a pass coverage linebacker and his skills in coverage, but instead he gets 2 sacks on the day. And he also had in the first quarter, this is a play that I'll be gushing about, is he stuffed the edge setting blocker on a run to the outside and just stonewalled that man. And it forced I think it was Gordon, to cut back inside and just get ran over by Calais Campbell, Matabike, and whoever the linebacker is that's flying in at that point. So that just showed me how versatile Tyus Bowser can be, not only in this pass coverage role that everybody wants to box him in at, but he has all of the traits to be, dynamic, and we've seen it and we've talked about it a lot, and it finally coming to fruition is really gratifying.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank everybody for writing in. We got a lot of questions on Twitter, which is nice to get people interacting with the account. And really appreciate everyone writing in and providing some great questions. Thank you for hopping on and answering them with me, bud.
Not a problem.
So any closing thoughts before we get out of here, coming up on the hour mark here, as Sunday Night Football is off to a hot start?
I haven't tuned in yet. Let me check that score real quick. You have it right in front of you.
Yep. It's New England just went up a touchdown.
Oh, wow.
So 7-3.
I don't think that game should be close at all. I don't care about how this is Bill Belichick against Brady. This game shouldn't be close. Tampa Bay should win by 30 just because of the team structure from both of them. New England's in a rebuild that they're kind of not rebuilding just because they signed a bunch of guys in the offseason to try and make themselves competitive and supply their rookie quarterback with weapons, which makes sense. But this game shouldn't be competitive at all. I think it's crazy that the Bucs are even down and it's midway through the second. I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. But closing thoughts are, as always, if you're not subscribed to this podcast, please consider subscribing. Giving a review with a rating is really awesome. 5 stars helps the algorithm for Jake and Spencer to be seen by more Baltimore Ravens fans. Honestly, share this podcast with some of your friends. I know that's a little weird to do the copy link and send it over, but it's the best way for people to listen in and also send their questions in. Follow the boys on their Twitter accounts. Jake will be shouting those out. But if you want to listen to my stuff as well, I'll give myself a little plug here. My Twitter account is @KylePBarber. And then I also, along with a massive amount of articles that I do, it's not a massive amount, I just wanted to say that for dramatic effect. Tune in to BaltimoreBeatdown.com. That's where I write my content. And then once a week on BaltimoreRavens.com, I do write late for work. So BaltimoreRavens.com/late-for-work. I do the post-game ones, so I'll have mine coming out on Mondays almost every single week. And then when the Ravens play on Monday night against the Colts, mine will be coming out on Tuesday. But thank you guys very much for tuning in. And Jake, you can finish off with all of your plugs, bud.
Absolutely. Those Twitter accounts you mentioned were @Podcast Beatdown, which is where you can follow the show on Twitter. You can find me @Jake Luke. That is LOUQUE. Follow Spencer, our other co-host who is not able to make it tonight, @Ravens4Dummies. Follow the flagship site account @BeMoreBeatdown. You can find us on Instagram @Baltimore_Beatdown_podcast. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to get full video episodes and some other content that we do here and there on there that's getting really close to 1,000 subscribers. So jump in there and do that if you're so inclined. Appreciate you joining me, buddy, here. Another huge win for the Ravens at 3-1. Life is good right now as a Ravens fan, and it feels great. So we'll talk to you guys later in the week. I might actually have a little bit of a midweek pod planned with a special guest, so we're going to confirm that. And hopefully what would be a really fun episode. So whether it's that or whether it's later in the week, we will talk to you guys. Have yourself a great, just cracking Monday here. And let's enjoy this win and keep moving forward.
We do have an opportunity that we might be landing a second special guest. I am working to confirm that as well. So we might have a whole host of episodes for you this week.
Content week. Love that. All right. Well, appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate everyone listening. We will talk to you guys later. Arrivederci.
You.
Gorlami. Gorlami.
Arrivederci. Arrivederci. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.